Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Drive Pink Dialogue. It is episode number 118 as we break down Inter Miami's 1-1 draw against Toronto FC. Before I introduce my lovely co-host, I just want to apologize for us being a little bit late. Scotty here was a little bit unprepared for this episode, but we made it happen, and I think we're ready to put on a banger. Saur, you're my friend, my co-host. How are you feeling today before we get into some Inter Miami talk?
It's Monday. It's the start of a very big week for Inter Miami, so I'm a little bit nervous, but it's a good thing that today we're not looking forward, but looking back to yesterday's game. And I'm excited to talk about it because yesterday after the game, there was a lot of negativity surrounding the game, and I wasn't sure why. So it'll be important to dissect into that and just take a measure of where this team is before what is potentially the biggest game of our season.
Yeah, and maybe we can spend a few minutes at the end talking about how this game applies to what we're going to see on Wednesday night. But before that, there is some late breaking news that had come up. Actually, there was a couple rumors earlier in the day that I thought were kind of nonsense. And it turns out, well, maybe there's a little bit of a detail that makes this a little bit more interesting. So let's talk about Kevin De Bruyne. It was announced a couple of days ago that he was planning to leave Manchester City at the end of the season. His contract runs out, and he and the club have decided not to move on to another contract. And he's one of those players that has always kept an eye on the MLS. And so it feels like, even though there's probably more of a financial benefit to going somewhere like Saudi Arabia, or maybe more of a competitive benefit going somewhere in Italy or Spain, where I'm sure he would still be phenomenal, it feels like there's real movement for him to potentially come to the MLS, and maybe that would even be his preferred choice. A couple outlets today reporting that Inter Miami was a team that could be considered, or maybe Inter Miami was getting ready to offer a contract and he has a relationship with David Beckham and all this other stuff. And for you and I, who have watched these types of transfer rumors come out every single day, not necessarily for Inter Miami, but for other teams, and turn into absolutely nothing, it was easy for me to see this coming out of England this morning and say, that's nonsense. But about 12 minutes ago, Paul Tenorio tweeted, and this is late breaking, so maybe there's more to the story we haven't even gotten to yet, that Inter Miami is actually the secret holder of Kevin De Bruyne's MLS discovery rights, which would give them the inside track and negotiating power to come sign Kevin De Bruyne in the summer. If there was ever a team that had a discovery rights on a player like this, they would do it for a specific reason. And all of a sudden, I think this is more plausible than I thought it was 20 minutes ago.
Yeah, I feel like if he's planning to come to the MLS, Inter Miami is definitely going to be in the mix, whether it's because they're actually interested or whether the media actually puts them in that conversation. We'll never truly find out until he actually makes his way stateside. Very exciting. Obviously, this is something that will get every single Inter Miami fan super hyped up. Fantastic player, obviously, one of the best midfielders of his generation, has been phenomenal for Manchester City. And I don't see a downside to him coming to Inter Miami and to the MLS. Of course, we can talk about the benefits of him, how he fits into the Inter Miami squad. But this is a phenomenal player. And if Inter Miami can make it happen, that would be absolutely, absolutely fantastic. But again, we don't know how much credence there is to this report. The not so secret discovery rights story that's just come out, it seems to lend a little bit more flavor to this. But I just want to be a bit reserved because the summer's a long way away, and perhaps he makes up his mind to come to the MLS. But so far, it's just rumors and speculations and maybe early stages to put too much credence into this. So I'm going to be reserved with my judgment here.
Let's talk about what we know, because sometimes it's fun to talk about Kevin De Bruyne coming to Inter Miami. Inter Miami has his discovery rights. That is what has been reported 15 minutes ago, which is awesome. Because even if they aren't the team that ends up signing him, they can trade those discovery rights to whoever does end up signing him and get some allocation money in return. They also have his discovery rights for a reason, which is the interesting part to me. You can only have, I believe, 7 players discovery rights, which means you have to be selective on who you choose. And I would imagine Inter Miami would have really wanted to get Angel Di Maria's and Neymar's and some of Messi's ex-Barcelona teammates or ex-PSG or ex-Argentina teammates to make sure they had the inside track on some of Messi's closest friends and players that he has great chemistry with. So the fact that they have gone out of their way to get these Kevin De Bruyne discovery rights, I think is interesting. I will remind you, Inter Miami doesn't have a DP slot, and Tom Bogert mentioned or reported this morning that he was looking for something in the range of 12 to 15 million per year as his salary from San Diego FC when him and that club were in discussions over the course of the last year. That would make him right around the second highest paid player in the MLS behind Messi. So we would be talking about something crazy of an investment. And I'm not even sure he's an incredible fit for this team based on what they're doing this season. So there's a lot of reasons why it makes no sense, but it's fun to dream, right? It's fun to think about.
Yeah, him and Busquets in the middle of the park would be an interesting combination. Absolutely no legs in there and no athleticism, but when you have the tactics and the skills and the talent, why do you need the legs, right? We just pop the ball into Messi from midfield and we should be good there. No, I'm not sure how he's going to fit into this Inter Miami squad. On a personal level, I'm not as excited because right now I don't understand how he's going to fit in the grander narrative of how Inter Miami wants to play. But again, you can't deny the talent that Kevin De Bruyne has, as I mentioned, one of the best midfielders of his generation. So it's going to be phenomenal if he comes to Inter Miami, but I'm not sure if it's the perfect fit for us. Maybe we don't even have to talk about it because who knows how this rumor goes.
Yeah, absolutely. Maybe we'll never talk about it again. Can I just say one thing, though? My little prediction, I don't think Kevin De Bruyne will be a success in the MLS, if I'm being perfectly honest with you.
I don't think so either.
It is fun to talk about or think about nonetheless. And it also maybe portrays Inter Miami having a little bit more ambition than we thought previously. Not possible at the moment because Jordi Alba's taking up that third DP spot. We will find out in a couple of weeks when the MLSPA reports salaries, whether that is flexible or not in terms of him being a DP. But until then, it's really just a pipe dream. But a pipe dream that got more legs 15 minutes ago. So we might as well throw him up there and talk about it.
Before we end our pipe dream, one question. Paul Pogba or KDB?
I would. Okay, here's my honest opinion. I think you get Paul Pogba for a TAM deal, and I also think he's a better fit. And I also think he's probably more motivated to be great now because of everything that's happened to him over the last year and a half with the suspension and it not really being able to prove himself at Juventus and kind of the way he left Man United. So it's been a long time since he's played soccer. I think his fit would be better for this Inter Miami team. And I also think you could get him on a cheaper deal, honestly. So, and that may not be true, but that's just what I think.
We're in agreement.
Okay. Let's get into the game. Before we start, there was some rotation. I think the big question mark going into the game was, is there going to be heavy rotation? Because this game will honestly probably not mean much to the grand scheme of things. This grand scheme of things, in all likelihood, Inter Miami is not going to fall 2 points short of whatever goal they want to achieve in the regular season this year. And so it's really just an interlude, a delay, a keep warm game for what happens on Wednesday. And so with that in mind, I think that has to be the first piece of context we use when we think about this game and how we analyze it, because they didn't play their best 11, even though the Stars did play. They did give some young guys an opportunity to play, Alan Obando and Santi Morales. And even in winning moments, they gave those guys sort of the go-ahead, go try and win the game. Ian Frey only played a half, et cetera. Drake Callender starts. So I think it is important to contextualize that before we really start digging into this game. Anything else you want to say before we get to the rundown?
Just to contextualize your context as well, I think based on our rotation, even if we put out a second squad, we should have beaten this Toronto team. They were there for the taking. They're quite poor this season, haven't won a single game. So yes, rotation, but it shouldn't really matter. The result should have been Inter Miami winning the game. Didn't happen, and that's understandable. Of course, these results happen in the MLS. But on paper, Inter Miami's second-tier team is still better than Toronto. So we should have got the job done. Just wanted to put that out there before we actually start rationalizing why Inter Miami lost the game or drew the game.
I do agree with that. Okay, you ready to do this?
Absolutely. Take us away.
Inter Miami, coming off a disappointing showdown in Hollywood, looks to turn over a new maple leaf against the Argonauts of Toronto, and they get off to a quick start. 4th minute off a corner. Jordi Alba fires off the volley, saved by Sean Johnson, just to let Segovia put another shot on goal. But it seems that Sean Johnson asked his old friend Brad Guzan for some advice. Fun and firing first half, stays scoreless into stoppage time when Federico Bernardeschi steals the show for a moment of glory, as graceful as a Blue Jay, channeling his inner Kyle Lowry behind the back and in. But Lionel Messi was not to be upstaged. In the 5th minute of stoppage time, he received the ball from Segovia, puts it between the legs of Nixon Gomes, and into the back of the net, followed by a Raptors roar. The second half felt like it was all Inter Miami. The golden moment came for the debutante when a mid-play injury gives Alan Obando a chance at glory. And glory was all he saw, because Sean Johnson and Nick Gomes do the acrobatics to keep the draw in place. Final chance for Miami at the death. And who better to have the ball than Lionel Messi? Back post cross. There it is. Fafa Bicot ready for it, but the Haitian sensation cannot put it on frame. Disappointing draw, but it's all to play for in the next one. See you guys on Wednesday. Let's go Herons.
All right. Thank you so much, guys. That was fantastic. Great talking to you. On to the next one against LAFC. You have done a brilliant job in condensing that game into a minute, 2 minutes, because as we were talking about offline, there were way too many things happening. And there was a lot to talk about. Big talking points in front of goal, final third chances. Inter Miami was dominant for large portions of the game. But if you talk to an Inter Miami fan after the game, it wouldn't seem that way. It almost felt like we lost that game. And I understand why. We had plenty of chances to kill it off. We created some good chances, especially in the second half. We took control of the game, did not let Toronto play much. But we fell short, and it was disappointing, to be sure. It was very disappointing not to come away with 3 points, especially at home. And I thought we had plenty of opportunities to kill this game. Could have been 4-2, 5-3. Of course, they had chances as well. But what I took away from that game was, yes, Inter Miami wasn't the cleanest in defense. We created some problems for our own selves, but I can understand why. I've rewatched the game and I know what the issues were and how those will be addressed in the next game. So that in itself makes me feel a little bit better. What I'm slightly worried about is Inter Miami's not poor form in front of goal, but just a lack of finishing that we've seen over the last couple of games, last 2.5 games, where I feel we should be scoring a lot more, but we just haven't been able to find that net as regularly as we want. The final third sharpness is missing. Hopefully we can find that. Rest, disappointing result, but this is the MLS. These results come our way from time to time, and we have to take it on the chin. And honestly, it wasn't like we weren't expecting it because before the game, we literally said to ourselves that this is one of those games where Inter Miami might get trumped. Of course, it doesn't feel good when that actually happens to you, but it's understandable. Disappointing, but we have to move on from this.
Yeah. Jake Sivan mentioned this during the broadcast, that during their interview to prep for this game with Javier Mascherano, Mascherano said that he always believed that the best way to get over a loss is to get a win in the next game. And so that's why I think they put so much pressure on themselves to win this game. And it leads into this question about rotation and whether it was the right decision to start these guys, whether this was the right preparation. I think that quote was at least illuminating for why he made some of the decisions he made from a who played standpoint. But it is a big difference from what we saw last year, where if Tata Martino was going to rotate and rest those guys, he would still play them for the final 30 minutes. And that actually gave them a chance on rested legs and having a chance to really see the first 60 minutes of the game come on fresh and try and win the game from there. Feels like the opposite approach being taken by Javier Mascherano. And that does interest me, because it did work a lot last year. And it feels like we're doing the opposite. And now that we need goals in the final moments, those guys are now either tired or having been subbed off or aren't fresh and ready to make the game happen. Of course, that doesn't matter if you score 3 in the first half, but they didn't. And in this game, it feels like we could have used a fresh set of Jordi Alba legs at the in the final 30 minutes, as opposed to having him run for the entire 90.
Yeah, it's not working. I've come to the conclusion that the rotation that we're currently using, or the policy that we're currently using for rotation and to rest players, is not entirely working for us. I don't know if Javier Mascherano has figured out how to play or prioritize the two tournaments in the MLS and the CONCACAF Champions Cup. It looks like he wants to win both, and that's a really good sign for us as a team. But I think at some point you have to understand how best to get the best out of our players, because I feel like by playing them in the first 60 minutes of the game rather than the latter 30, you're almost setting them up for failure, because if you don't play well and if it doesn't go your way, the players are actually running themselves into the ground trying to chase that goal, come off frustrated, and then you don't have enough firepower on the bench to try and change the game. I don't want to overanalyze this situation, but I do think it's slightly problematic, especially with regards to the top, like the 4 Fantasticos that we have and their rotation that we've seen. It hasn't worked out as much. I would have very much preferred Alan Obando to start the game and then maybe Suárez to come on towards 100%. The second half of the game to try and change things up. Same with Messi, perhaps give him the 30 minutes off the bench to keep him fresh. I think there was plenty of opportunity to change up the midfield a little bit as well. So this was the game where I would have actually tried a little bit more rotation, especially with our Barcelona boys. But it just doesn't seem to be coming. And I feel like Javier Mascherano has an understanding of how he wants to rotate, and it just doesn't fit with our understanding of it. So, oh well.
There's been, are we going to talk about Luis Suárez later, do you think?
No, I've done enough talking about Luis Suárez over the last 2 weeks, so I wanted to give it a break.
Okay, so I will just say he's now gone 7 games without a goal from the run of play. He did have a penalty against Cavalier in Jamaica, but his prior goal from the run of play came when there was a bad turnover in South Florida from, I believe, the Cavalier player. I can't remember his name, but it was the first leg against Cavalier 7 games ago. Luis Suárez has not scored a goal from the run of play, and he started every game. You think it probably doesn't affect him because he's already working hard, he's already running, but that's the type of dip in performance that you might say, man, he could really use 60 minutes on the bench, and then he comes fresh with a new set of eyes in the final 30 minutes of the game to help make the difference, right? And so maybe it isn't all 4 of them at the same time. Obviously, Busquets was going to play yesterday because of the suspension on Wednesday, but you don't have to, I think, give all of them every single start. Mix it up a little bit, and I think you will be better off. The Suárez note, I think, is the biggest concern for Inter Miami right now, if I'm being totally honest with you. 7 games without a goal from the run of play is probably his longest streak in Inter Miami, and it's one of the reasons we haven't scored as many goals since, the Houston game, the first couple games of the year.
I'm just going to sit here in silence for the next 30 seconds just to give you the I told you so in quotation marks. But no, in all seriousness, it is a bit of a worry, because he has been our leading man for the last 10 games, and we haven't had anyone to back him up. Yesterday, what we saw from Alan Obando, he's not the finished product, and we can't rely on him to make those goal contributions, to fill up some of those gaps that Luis Suárez leaves by not scoring goals. I think it'll change, but I hope it doesn't come at the expense of us losing against LAFC, because we need everyone to fire on all cylinders. It's been a problem since the start of the season, and you haven't come to light in this, and maybe I'm proven wrong about this, but there is an issue with how we want to play under Javier Mascherano. Luis Suárez gets lost for large portions of the game. I don't think it was as obvious when we played for Tata Martino, but I feel like there's definitely an issue here, and we'll see. We'll see how it plays out, but I haven't liked the look of Suárez this season for the entirety of it, and you've heard my thoughts on it, so I'm just going to keep it there, and then we'll see what people say.
I like how you started that by saying, I'm just going to be silent for the next 30 seconds. And then you just talk for the next 30 seconds.
You bring that side out for me, man. It's not my fault, okay? It's not my fault.
There was another, part of this game that I thought was worth mentioning, because we did give up a number of, I think, high-profile chances to Toronto, especially in that first half. They were getting real shots on goal, real clear-cut opportunities. It was Corbeanu who had hit the post twice. We had Drake Callender had to make a really nice save or two at the last sort of 2 or 3 minutes of the game. It felt like there were some defensive issues that we haven't seen a ton of in this season so far. And on my rewatch, it became absolutely clear what that was. We talked about it in the instant reaction last night, but it only solidified with my rewatching today. And that was 2 parts, and we can go over them, individually. But there was one play that I thought really highlighted this, and that was in the 19th minute. Federico Bernardeschi on that right side, beyond Jordi Alba, is just too quick, too athletic for Gonzalo Lujan, who has to cover that entire side of the field to handle. He absolutely runs around Gonzalo Lujan, and then he finds Lorenzo Insigne, who's making a run out of central midfield into the box. Nobody picks him up. He gets the ball inside the 18-yard box and gets a nice shot on goal. Drake Callender does make a save to his low right, but and ultimately that leads to Corbeano's second shot off the post that was to the far post. That might be the part of the play you remember, but it was the opening phase of that play that I thought so highlighted what was wrong with our defense last night. In the first part, Gonzalo Lujan cannot do that job on the left side of that central part of defense, because that player has to make up for everything that Jordi Alba leaves open, and he just isn't athletic enough for that. That makes me nervous. Maybe we'll talk about him again later. And then the second part was Lorenzo Insigne coming out of the midfield. How often last year did we yell and scream and cry about nobody picking up the runners out of the midfield? And then as soon as we put in Yannick Bright, that basically disappeared overnight, because he's the guy that does that. You look at that play, and I rewatched it a couple times, and it's like, it could have been Redondo, it could have been Busquets, but no one actually did it. And then the player, who Insigne is a quality player, he gets the ball inside the 18-yard box with an opportunity to put the ball on net, and he gets a shot off. And it's the little things that made last night's performance, I think, not great, but also makes me feel confident that it's only a few personnel issues or changes that we will see on Wednesday, which will make that not happen again. You put Yannick Bright in the midfield, those runners out of the midfield do not come open. And you put Noah Allen, for example, at that left-sided center back, and all of a sudden you've cleaned up with a pacier, quicker, more athletic defensive player covering that large space of ground. You kind of clean up all of the defensive issues that we saw last night in one personnel switch, or I guess 2 personnel switches.
Yeah, you covered everything that I wanted to touch upon. I think that one play is the personification of what was going wrong for Inter Miami on that pitch defensively. You mentioned the midfield issue. You need somebody like Yannick Bright to cover some of those runs coming in from the midfield, stopping someone like Lorenzo Insigne from getting at the end of a well-delivered ball into the box and getting those shots off in the middle of the park. That changed as soon as Yannick Bright came on. I thought we looked a lot more solid when Yannick Bright was on the pitch, for obvious reasons, because he does the cleaning up. And there was a couple of instances, once when Santi Morales lost the ball, once I think when Yannick Bright himself lost the ball, where he just tracked back and won the ball back again. And you're like, okay, this is what we were missing in that first half. But the more difficult part of that defense and watching that game yesterday was seeing how much Gonzalo Lujan was actually struggling. Now, we're going to talk a little bit more about him in the awards, I'm sure. But that was the gaping hole. Having somebody in that left centre-back role who covers for Jordi Alba is the key to maintaining our defensive structure. Gonzalo Lujan, I'm not sure how many games he's played with Jordi Alba, but if I tracked correctly, I think he's only played 1 game in the left centre-back position, if that. He's not comfortable covering for Alba when Alba pushes that high, because there leaves a massive gap in that side of the pitch. And Gonzalo Lujan is almost left in no man's land. And he hasn't learned how to actually figure out when to go to a person, when to control the space, when to actually push in versus when to go out to the wide angles. So that was a glaring issue. I feel like half of Toronto's, if not more, all of their attacks came from that side of the pitch. And when you have a player like Bernardeschi, who's running the show on that side of the pitch so well, and you leave that much space in behind and don't cover your space as well, these issues are going to happen. Now, I'm not worried about this by any means, as you mentioned, because I think this is going to get fixed immediately as soon as we change the personnel. Um, so it's going to be okay. And that for me was the least of our concerns yesterday. So understandable why these issues were created. Going forward, perhaps we might need to look at how we want to play Gonzalo Lujan and Jordi Alba on that side of the pitch. But I think this is fixable. So shouldn't be an issue against LAFC on Wednesday.
Yeah, and as Chris says in the chat, if you put Noah Allen there, I think you just have a great partnership where the two players understand each other much better. And I also think Noah Allen is just physically more capable of handling that role. We'll talk about
IQ-wise as well.
Lujan more.
IQ-wise as well, because he knows he's played as left back. So he knows when he needs to go to a person on the wings and when he actually needs to protect the space in behind him. And having played that position quite a while now, basically since the start of this season, earlier in last season as well, he understands how to play with Jordi Alba. As you said, that chemistry is really there. So that helps a lot. And then he has the physical attributes to do it.
Yeah, and I really only wanted to bring this up to say everyone, no worries about the defense. It was a personnel issue. I'd be honest with you, I don't know if we're going to see Lujan on that left side center back again this year.
We shouldn't.
If Jordi Alba's on the field, if I'm being totally honest. I thought it was really that bad. A couple of moments. I mean, the goals I thought were big moments. Bernardeschi has that incredible dribble inside the box with three guys around him, Gonzalo Lujan and Jordi Alba trying to take the ball away from him. I said Kyle Lowry, but it really looked more like Allen Iverson with the crossover behind his back and then gets the slight touch. And it was the only way he could have gotten to the ball was just kicking out a left foot, trying to touch it. And the only way it was going from there was to that left side of the net. It's hard for me to blame Drake Callender. It's hard for me to blame Jordi Alba. It's Gonzalo Lujan, I think maybe could have been a little bit more well-positioned prior to the pass. But once Bernardeschi makes that move, it's just hats off and congratulations on an incredible goal from him.
Yeah, I feel like Jordi Alba could have been maybe a little bit more physical, but that's nitpicking. That was pure skill. So can't really say much there. Gonzalo Lujan and Jordi Alba had issues, and that was how the goal happened. Their spacing was all over the place, and definitely Gonzalo Lujan could have done better in preventing that ball coming into Bernardeschi. But once it came into Bernardeschi, I think it was game over, and they had to score because he just had a brilliant move to take everyone away and then just pop the ball into it. It almost felt like as soon as the ball came to him, he had glue on his feet and the ball just never left it until it went into the back of the net. It happens from time to time. Usually Inter Miami always gives gives a chance away like this during the game. But we end up scoring a lot more goals, so it doesn't really matter. Yesterday it mattered. So hats off to Bernardeschi, as you said.
Wow.
Great piece of skill.
Again, that's just incredible.
Yeah, exactly.
I just realized I forgot to mention both of the called off goals, both in the rundown and here. Inter Miami puts the ball in the back of the net relatively early. It was in the 29th minute. Messi finds Suárez ahead of the ball. Suárez pulls up, finds Segovia as the trailing runner, and he slashes it into the back of the net. Suárez is sort of his shoulders offsides. He is offsides. I thought that was a good call, but it was an example of this team creating plenty of opportunities and creating real goal scoring chances in the first half. It just wasn't quite clicking like it had to be. In that specific case, it was Suárez being half a step off sides, but I thought there was plenty of moments in the first half that showed Inter Miami was being goal dangerous. And then again, it was Messi in the 39th minute where there's a poor clearance and it goes Taylor to Frey back to Messi, who spins out of a tackle by Davy Flores and then puts it in the back of the net. That was called off for that VAR review on Messi kicking the foot of Nixon Gomes earlier in the play. But again, Inter Miami created plenty of offense, I thought, in this game. More of my disappointment came in the second half where they were creating real opportunities. We'll talk about Alan Obando in a second, but Fafa Pico had some opportunities. Luis Suárez had the big notable opportunity, and they just couldn't put away the winning goal.
The patterns of play were all in place, and I would have been a lot more concerned and disappointed and frustrated if we hadn't actually created those opportunities. We had some 23, 25 goals, shots on goal, which was fantastic. And we were creating those opportunities. I thought we used Segovia really well. He had some really good chances. we maybe can use our wingers a little bit better, but I want to reserve that conversation for when we talk about the personnel and the players and the awards. So we'll come back to that conversation. But we were creating plenty of opportunities, especially in that second half where it became a lot more clear cut, where we were throwing the kitchen sink at Toronto and it just didn't break through.
Yeah, and then Messi does break through right before the half. Segovia carries it centrally and passes to Messi, and he does what he does. I don't really have many thoughts on this goal. It was just classic. Put Messi in the box with the ball at his feet, and he's probably going to score a goal. There was a VAR look, and I thought it was a good no call, but ultimately it was the yell and scream afterwards that got me really excited because for a league that has a lot of superstars where you can say, do they really care? Lorenzo Insigne being a perfect example. Olivier Giroud, who we didn't play last week and might or might not play again this week, another example. You can tell that Lionel Messi is so fired up for this and this team, and that's great to see, as always.
Yeah, and the fact that he had a couple of goals called off was a big sign of how frustrated he was of not scoring already. And he was trying everything this game. He tried really hard, and I thought he had a fantastic game. He was brilliant throughout, and on any other day, he could have had 2, 3, 4 goals. He had a really good shot straight into Sean Johnson's face that kind of caught him unawares, but he saved that ball. Had some really good dribbles as well. And then obviously that goal that got chalked off was brilliantly taken. But even the second goal that was counted, he sort of, Telasco Segovia fired the ball into him, and his first touch lifted the ball up. And I thought, oh, it's a bad touch. But it was perfectly positioned for him to just volley it into the back of the net, and so beautifully taken. I thought he had a really good game. On any other day, he scores more goals.
Yeah, okay, let's jump into the second half. Alan Obando, he has the big moment, 77th minute. Kosi Thompson, who is the right back, he cramps mid-kick, so he doesn't get quite the force he was trying to get on. It seemed like he was trying to pass back to the keeper, Sean Johnson. Doesn't get any force on it, and you can see he's cramping as soon as the ball touches his foot. And Alan Obando sort of there, and it feels like, wow, this is the dream debut for him. And I think for every Inter Miami fan, everything slowed down in that moment because when the goal scoring opportunity is there and it's wide open, you think, how can you possibly miss this? Good close down from Nixon Gomes. Sean Johnson comes out, but Alan Obando, a little bit of a heavy touch, takes him. He tries to take it farther away from Gomes, who he sees coming to his right, kind of takes him in the path of Sean Johnson, and ultimately the two converge. It was a nice play on the second part of that second phase of that play by Gomes to stick his right foot out to block it. I think if you saw some of the screenshots on Twitter last night, you would be impressed with his defensive performance. But ultimately, the ultimate moment for a young 18-year-old debutant trying to make his name on Lionel Messi's team, it was there. But he'll have to wait till next game to make that moment happen.
I held my breath, and I honestly thought this was his moment, but it may have been his first touch of the entire game. And it was a bad first touch because he just had so much to do after that. And it's understandable. He's 18. Obviously, the occasion got the better of him. My issue was that after that, he sort of had a bit of, I think, decline in confidence, and he just needs to take it on his chin. It's just one chance. Obviously, he could have put it in the back of the net and had that glory, but if he ends up scoring against LAFC, all would be forgotten. So it's okay. These things happen. Young player, of course, you expect him to do better, but he's going to learn from it and get better.
Okay, let's talk about Toronto for a few minutes because we did not give them a lot of credit in the pregame show, even though we thought it was a very real chance that they could win this game or get a draw at the very least. And in fact, there was a potential handball in the 92nd minute. And if they had converted that for the win, it would have gone exactly how I predicted in the pregame show. But we didn't give them a lot of credit. And I thought there was more to be excited about if you were a Toronto fan than I thought there would be. They have a lot of young players that showed a little bit. Nixon Gomes, one of them, thought he had a really nice game defensively. Corbeanu had created a couple opportunities for himself. Needs to work on his finishing by about 4 inches, but that's a lot better than, a lot of other guys. John Mota just came to my head and him shooting a ball 20 yards over the post.
What a throwback.
Yeah. So, I mean, I thought they had some really interesting pieces. And of course, having Lorenzo Insigne back and being a big runner for them, that's some real quality. And then Bernadeschi, if you're going to give him space like we gave him last night, he can be really, really effective. And you saw with his goal the absolute quality he can have in the right moments.
Yeah, credit where it's due. They were better than I expected them to be, and they were there to play. They didn't, well, they did sit back for large parts, and they did sit into a low block in the second half for sure. But when they had the opportunity, they tried to take the game to us. And honestly, they had a few chances. And as Taylor Twellman loves to say, they could have scored maybe one or two more goals. Bernadeschi, obviously quality player. Lorenzo Insigne I thought was decent, but for me, I think Gomi stood out quite a bit. He was defensively everywhere, putting a block, putting a leg in every time a ball went into the box, cleared really well, but also his ball carrying is quite underrated. I've really enjoyed seeing him do that a couple of times against us last season. And then yesterday as well, he had a couple of moments where he just drove the ball into the midfield and then passed it off to Bernadeschi or Lorenzo Insigne, and that just started off some of their attacks. So very promising player. I really, really enjoy that from him. Underrated. And then their attacker as well, Brynhildsen, I believe that's his name.
Yeah,
He showed a little bit of promise. I thought he was a good target man for them, someone that they can play off of. So I was surprised by the fact that they actually showed up and tried to play. And I like that because it made the game a bit more interesting. I still think there's a lot for them to do in terms of getting into the playoffs and getting good results. But yesterday was maybe a worn out team that everyone's forgotten about and not giving much credit to, showing that they have a little bit of spark in them, that they can rally together a result against a really big team in the MLS.
Yeah, I agree. I think they are more interesting than we gave them credit for, and we'll see what they can do. And they have a couple guys that are young and exciting that were injured for this game. Maybe we'll see them in the second leg of the season or in the reverse leg. I want to have a conversation about how this game plays into Wednesday night, but maybe we should do awards first. But a couple final points. Miami King, I think, brings up a good one. He says that the right side of the attack is gone without Allende on the pitch. Sorry, I see you shaking your head. Do you disagree or you agree?
No, I agree. I absolutely agree.
I think we're on different phases here, actually, because I actually thought they did a good job of using the right side of the pitch. Robert Taylor was involved a couple times, and I thought Fafa Biko got himself involved a lot in the second half, and he just wasn't able to convert his chances, and in a pretty disappointing way. He had a number of opportunities to be dangerous where they got him the ball in the final third in the 18-yard box, and he didn't do what he needed to do with it. Either he was too slow or he couldn't put the ball on net, or he kind of backtracked and had to return to a different phase of play. It was not that the team couldn't find him opportunities on the right side. It was that once he got them, he wasn't able to do anything with them, which is different than the team structurally not using the right side. And even in the first half, there was a moment in the 31st minute where Robert Taylor gets the ball and he tries to cross over the guy guarding him, and he just hits it a little too hard and it goes out of play. He's not able to run around it and keep it in. But if he does, he's wide open entering the 6-yard box with an opportunity to pass it to a Suárez or a Segovia are putting themselves in position to score. So I actually thought they did a fine job of creating potential offense to the right side. It's just the story of the whole game was they weren't able to convert enough of the half chances they were creating.
Yes and no. So I kind of agree with everything you just said, but there's also an element to this. So I watched that right side very closely on the rewatch. And yes, especially in that second half, Fafa Picault was being utilized or given the ball plenty of times. He had a fair few opportunities. I remember one moment where Messi had a really good ball into him at an angle where Messi had previously scored for him a couple of games ago. And I thought, Fafa Picault, this is your opportunity. Bury it in the back of the net. And he just ended up hitting a defender and it went out for a corner. That happened a couple of times, actually. And then obviously that last minute was from a corner. But still, Fafa was getting involved quite a bit. At the start of the game, though, there were a couple of instances where Robert Taylor was taking up brilliant positions. And 22nd minute comes to mind. If you go back and rewatch that play, Messi gets the ball. Robert Taylor is completely free, running straight at an angle into space. and Messi turns inwards to his left rather than go out right. And that had happened a couple of times. So maybe there was a change of instructions after halftime where they were like, okay, give Robert Taylor more of the ball, or give that right side a bit more of the ball, play out from that side as well. Because I felt like we were favoring the left a little bit, at least in the first half. Then there's the second argument, which I think we need to ask about, and that's the personnel and the profile. We're really missing today Allende. We've constantly talked about when it's the Allende Segovia duo on the left and right. We've talked about how we have two different play styles. On the right, completely different, on the left, completely different. Allende has this tendency to just run in behind defenses and be able to make those runs on the shoulder of the defender, which we have not seen either Fafa Pico or Robert Taylor do. Now, there are two arguments to this, right? So one is that maybe they're not capable of doing it, which I disagree with. I think Robert Taylor, Fafa Pico both have that ability to make those runs in behind. And we've seen that in a couple of games. I think it was 2 games ago, I forget against which team, but we had Fafa Pico, Robert Taylor both playing, and they were making those runs in behind because there was plenty of space behind them. So I think those runs they do make, but it's not as effective as Allende. Allende has been doing it very effectively, and we've been able to find him. The second element is when we face a team that's in a low block. Now, Allende has the skill set and the physicality and just the, I don't want to say aura because that kind of cuts out what the talent and the skill in it, but he has that ability on the ball to just beat defenders. Like, he's physically very demanding, and it takes a lot for defenders to get the ball off him. And that creates the space in behind automatically. Neither Fafa nor Robert Taylor have been able to do that yet. And I feel like not having that profile like Allende on the right side is really hurting us and maybe making our attack a little bit disbalanced. I'll stop there to see what you have to say.
I have a problem with this Allende conversation. And by the way, I should mention Jay has said in the chat that Allende posted on his social media that he was back in training. So maybe he will be available for Wednesday. We don't know. I have trouble with this Allende conversation. A lot of people have gone to this as why we haven't produced enough in the last 2 games because we're missing Allende. But this team should be good enough without Allende. And so it's not like you're saying we're without Suárez or Messi. It's just one player who is a starter but not a star on this team, and you should be able to figure it out. And by the way, the guys coming in, this is not Nico Stefanelli and Coco Jean. It's your options. It is Robert Taylor and Fafa Pico, who are certified good players in this league. So you're telling me with 2 different style wingers, you can't get the job done with guys that are good players in this league. And that's why I just have a problem with that conversation. And obviously Allende is better. He's better than those 2, no doubt about it. Better on the ball, more goal dangerous, more athletic, more physical, harder to defend. Absolutely. All of that's true. But that's not really an excuse for me. If it's Messi, it's an excuse. If it's Allende, it's not an excuse.
And that's why I mentioned that both Fafa Pico and Taylor should be capable of doing it. So I don't necessarily know why we're not being able to create that space in behind, but we're missing penetration. We're missing verticality. Maybe it's because we faced 2 teams consecutively who sit in a low block and actually defend very deep for us to be able to use that verticality. But I've seen us do this in the early games where we draw the defenses out and then hit them on the slide. But I feel like there's something missing.
Toronto did sit in a low block in this game. I mean, we pushed them deep for a nice 30-minute period in the second half, but that was not their game plan. It was to just lock up everything.
Exactly. So why are we pushing them deep rather than making use of the space in behind, right? Like I'm failing to understand why we're not doing the same things that were working for us so well 5 games ago. And now it almost feels like we're back to somewhat of last season where it seems a little bit one-dimensional on both sides, where we are running out of ideas of how to unlock defenses.
I think we're going somewhere we don't want to go because
Maybe.
they put 23 shots on shots.
Absolutely.
They made
Absolutely.
Sean Johnson have a nice game. They could have scored 4 or 5 goals in this game by doing exactly what they were doing with just a little bit of a better finish. They could have probably
And maybe
scored
that's it. And
3
maybe
goals
that's
in the
it,
first
right?
half without
Maybe
much of a
we were
question.
not
So
clinical enough.
yeah, but that's a new thing. So
Yeah.
I don't think this is anything to be worried about, honestly. And again, if this was just a regular season MLS game and not sandwiched between the LAFC games, I don't think we'd be worried about it at all. So that's my thing. Allende is going to be great when he comes back, but in the meantime, we should have won that game 3-1. So it is what it is. Anything else you want to talk about before we get to awards?
No, I think we can get into it.
Okay. Guys, as you may know, we give out 6 awards on this channel: a Heron of the match, a Heron that flew north, and 2 individual awards each. And tell me if you disagree, thought it was a little hard to come up with who I wanted to give awards to today, because I felt like there was 6 or 7 or 8 players that really deserved a conversation after this one. But I did go first last time, so we will get there. As we get there, we might have to have a few extra conversations at the end. You get to give the man of the match or the Heron of the match for this game based on me going first last time and also being a gentleman. So, Saur, tell me who was Inter Miami's Heron of the match.
I'm going to give the Heron of the match to none other than Lionel Messi. Could have had a hat trick if those 2 goals hadn't been chopped off. He looked great. I think he had a fantastic game, tried to take the game by the scruff of its neck. And overall, I thought he was brilliant. Got that 1 goal immediately after Bernadeschi scored and basically made sure we don't lose. Maybe sometimes you can accuse him of doing a little bit too much, but honestly, with his skill set, you can't even hold that against him. Maybe could have got a few more goals, but overall, I thought looked sharp, looked good. Fantastic finish for his goal and taking players on. We saw somewhat the best of Messi yesterday.
I don't have anything to add to that. He was great.
Yeah, exactly.
He was the best player on the pitch.
And honestly, I wanted
awesome.
I thought about giving it to somebody like Segovia, but I thought, you know what? I don't want to make up an award for Lionel Messi. So I'm just going to give the man of the match award
and
to
it's
him.
deserved. I mean, he was the best player.
Exactly.
No doubt.
Exactly. So we can move on to the next award.
It is wild that he's just so good that when he's normal, when he's himself, he's the best player on the pitch, and so he gets the Heron of the match. But it's also us just saying he just does what he normally does.
Exactly.
Yeah. So I'm happy to move on too, because there's nothing really else to be said.
Maybe we should discount him next time from this award. Just not count him in.
Okay. We'll move on because I think there are a lot more interesting conversations to have. And the next award we'll give out is the Heron that flew north. And for those that are joining us for the first time, Florida Herons don't fly north for the winter. They don't fly anywhere for the winter. So if you catch one flying north, you caught one doing the wrong thing. And I was stuck between 2 players, really. And the one I didn't give it to was Gonzalo Lujan, who I think is probably worthy of a longer conversation. We've already started to have that. But the player I did give it to was Fafa Picault. And I started to mention it over the course of that conversation we just had. He was getting opportunities in the final third inside the 18-yard box. He had a ball in the 80th minute where Messi gets him, or I believe it was Busquets actually gets him the ball down the right side. He tries to play to Chelo Wigan. He puts it too far. Messi gets him the ball earlier on the 57th minute with room on the right, and he takes one extra touch. He waits too long, and the defender's able to get in place and block a shot. And then ultimately in the 94th minute, Messi finds him on the back post, and he can't put the ball on target. It bounces, and it bounces up over the net. I thought if he was more clinical, we would have won this game, and that's true for a lot of players. But for a player that came in the second half to have that type of impact and who got plenty of opportunities in the final third in a way that he didn't last week or in the midweek game, I thought it was disappointing from Fafa that he wasn't able to give just a little bit more quality in the dying moments, really.
Hero one game, sort of a villain in the next game, right? I can see that. Maybe I would have given it to Luhan myself, but I can completely see why Fafa Pico gets Heron that flew north award. He was involved in a lot of good chances that should have ended in the back of the net, and you can't blame anybody but him. Of course, there's the positive that he got in those positions in the first place to be
Yeah.
able to get those chances. He had a really good ball into Suárez as well that he wasn't able to convert at the end. But I agree with you. I think there were plenty of chances for Fafa Pico to actually score a goal and take the glory home, but we weren't able to. So, yeah, I don't think this is a major conversation point. I think he'll be fine. He'll learn from it and he'll grow from it. But it would have been nice to see him actually get on the score sheet.
Yeah, I have one comment. He came on at halftime for Robert Taylor, and I would have liked to see him come on 10, 15 minutes later.
Yeah.
He is energy and hustle, and that's like his biggest strength. And so I don't know why you'd want to put him on after the defense just got a 15-minute rest, really make them exhaust themselves for 60, 65 minutes, then put him on. I don't know if you're saving, like, I don't know if that decision had to do with Wednesday night, but I would have liked to see him come on a little bit later because that's his game is athleticism, balls over the top, versatility, and being willing to sort of make those runs in behind and work hard to create opportunities for himself. He does that, but if you just give him a little bit more of an advantage by waiting another 15 minutes, I think he's even more effective.
Yeah, Mistiano's more eloquent than you. Fafa's supposed to be the condiment, but not the main course, which is fair. I was very surprised. Go on.
Putting the sauce on the side really worked this game. If you know, you know.
Yeah. I will say I was surprised Robert Taylor came off in the 45th minute. I thought he was good to go at least 60, and he was having a decent game. I don't think he was as bad as some people I saw on social media make it out to be. And I think Fafa Pico would have been a lot more effective towards the last 20, 30 minutes of the game. But it is what it is. He had his opportunities, got into some good spaces, but was unable to convert the chances. And it feels like that was the story of Inter Miami in this game against Toronto. We found ourselves in good spots, but weren't able to finish it, and Fafa Pico was at the head of it. So understandable, Heron that flew north award. I can agree with it.
Okay. Give me your first personal award, individual award.
I'm going to go with an easy one here. I'm going to go with the Get Out of My Swamp award. And this is a direct quotation from perhaps the best movie that was ever made.
I don't know what the movie is. Let's see who played.
Do you want me to give you a hint of what the movie is? Well,
I'm gonna guess first because it'll be more fun that way. It's Telasco Segovia because he is really a salad, and salads are made out of vegetables, and you can find vegetables in grassy areas, and grassy areas are near swamps. And he was in the wrong spot. He was in a swamp. Someone told him to get out of his swamp. He went to where he was supposed to be. And that was a beautiful, delicious salad with some sauce on the side. Telasco Segovia.
I like how you continue your theme of linking Telasco Segovia with sources, which for the life of me, I can't understand. This was the most convoluted answer to my question, but it's correct. Get Out of My Swamp is from the fantastic Oscar-winning movie Shrek, where Shrek tells all the fairy tale characters to get out of his swamp. And Telasco Segovia for the last 2 or 3 games was amongst those fairy tale characters stuck in his own La La Land and stuck in a rut and basically sitting in a swamp, not being able to perform. But today, he finally heard Shrek and he got out of the swamp and decided to perform. I think the best that we've seen from him since that NYCFC game. Absolutely fantastic today. Was my shout for man of the match, but I had this really nice award that I wanted to give him, so I stuck with this. The biggest difference for me was his influence on this game. A lot of the times you and I have talked about how on the left, sometimes Segovia doesn't get lost as such, but isn't as influential because he's not able to get on the ball. He's trying to find spaces to affect the game, but honestly, more often than not, he gets in the way at times, and it almost feels like he doesn't necessarily get the best out of him when he's on that left side of the pitch. Today, he played a lot more central, but not central in the final third, in the last portions of the game, in between the spaces, but more central in the midfield, where he started to get on the ball and pass the ball into Messi and feed it into the final third, which I thought was absolutely fantastic. Gave Jordi Alba a lot of space to run into, which is what you expect Segovia to do. But at the same time, he was the one getting on the ball, getting the ball from Sergio Busquets, and then feeding into the final third, which made him a lot more impactful, a lot more effective, and would have got his goal if not for Suárez's shoulder. So I thought he had a brilliant game, and honestly, this is the Segovia we need against LAFC. Needs to be more central, but slightly more central in the middle of the park.
I totally agree. Telasco Segovia had a phenomenal game. He did exactly what he wanted to, and it was a great bounce back after a couple, I think, disappointing performances from him or underwhelming performances from him. The quality is just so strong. I think seeing the ball hit the back of the net was good for him because he came out right after that and really got involved in the second half of the first half, the final 15 minutes. He's a real player. It's just in the most important moments, can he figure out how he has to impact the game in the right way? Didn't feel like it hasn't felt like he's done that particularly well in the CONCACAF Champions Cup games, but it was good to see this performance from him heading into the biggest game of the season against LAFC this weekend or this midweek. So I agree with the award. I think mine was better, but I will leave it at that. Telasco Segovia, good award, and he deserves an award. I thought he was used properly. Not that he was used properly, but that he had the off-ball work and getting himself into good position so that he could be effective on the ball. I really loved his performance, if I'm being honest with you.
Yeah. All right. Give us the next award and tell us why it's linked to a sauce or a food item.
I'm giving the Fancy Feet Award.
Oh, my God. You've given the Fancy Feet Award so many times. I don't think this is fair. Guys, in the chat, I really need you to tell us who has the better awards, because I feel like Scotty's coming to a stage where he's now starting to repeat his awards, and that is against his contractual agreement, and somebody needs to sue him for this. The Fancy Feet Award obviously goes to Drake Callender because he had a good game with the ball at his feet. Let's move on.
Drake Callender gets the Fancy Feet Award. And by the way, repeating an award for a artistic and creative purpose is totally within the bounds of our contracts.
By the way, I have never repeated an award. Just say.
That's because you don't have enough creativity to come with. Your awards aren't good enough to be worth repeating. I think that's pretty clear. Drake Callender gets on the ball a lot. I actually was more impressed with him the second time I watched the game. He had a really nice save in, I think, the 90th or 91st minute that not every goalkeeper makes. He did spill a ball earlier in the first half, that in that 19th minute moment we talked about earlier with Gonzalo Lujan. But I thought it was like an above average to good performance from Drake. He had some really nice passes. He had a nice ball to Ian Frey under pressure, I might add, that led directly to an opportunity where Drake he gets it to Frey. Frey goes to Messi. Messi puts a ball over to Luis Suárez. And if Suárez was any other player, he gets the ball and creates a chance. He's a little slow, as we know. And so Sean Johnson was able to get to it first. But it was like a direct, we're under pressure. They're trying to pressure us high, press us high. And our goalkeeper got us out of it and created an opportunity going the other way. So I think it was a really nice performance. He had another nice ball to Sergio Busquets. One of the things I want to talk about with Drake Callender this whole season is we've been so impressed with Oscar Stadi, and deservedly so because he's been great. But we never saw if that could be contributed to the coaching staff. A new coaching staff coming in and working with the players to be more than they've been in the past. We've just attributed to Oscar Stadi's experience and the fact that he's done it so many places or whatever. But I really do think there might be more to Drake Callender's game that this new coaching staff brings out and forces him to do. And so this was, I think, our first opportunity to see that. They went to him a lot. They were very comfortable pushing the ball back to him when they were under pressure, and he did a fine job of getting out of it. And so when we're talking about fancy feet, ironically, I gave this award last game for Oscar Stadi for not having fancy enough feet. Today, I give it to Drake Callender for having fancy enough feet. I thought it was a good performance. I thought he had some nice saves. Not spectacular, not world-changing, but it was like, this is what a starting level goalkeeper looks like in the MLS. I did not feel that way with Rocco. I do feel that way with Ustari. So great performance. I'm really happy with the performance from Drake Callender, and I'm happy he's still with the team and not being shipped out.
Yeah, I agree with a lot of what you said. I think it was a decent performance. Nothing to write home about in terms of fantastic saves or game changing, but I think he did his job really well. And as your award suggests, one standout aspect of his performance was how well he actually passed the ball around. That one moment, as soon as he hit that ball over to Frey, it stood out to me, and I was like, okay, this is new. We don't see him do this enough. I still want to see him command his box a little bit better. Just be a little bit more assertive in that our final third. And overall, I thought he had a good comeback performance. He'd only played 4 minutes thus far this season, so good to see him get an entire game. And I think this is going to be more or less the cadence now, where he's probably going to play in the MLS right now. And if we progress in the CONCACAF Champions Cup, Ustari is going to get those games. There's definitely enough that I've seen here where I can say, going forward, if he continues to get better and better and get back to the best that we know him, he's probably going to become our number one goalkeeper again. But right now, I thought that was a decent enough performance. Nothing to write home about.
I'll be honest, I'm not there yet. I don't know the next time we'll see him, so I wouldn't go as far as you just went. But a good performance nonetheless, and I'm happy for him, and I'm happy he's still part of the team.
If this was a normal first choice, second choice goalkeeper situation, Ray Callender would probably be getting every alternate games. But it feels like Ustari is obviously the preferred goalkeeper right now. So I'm not sure how it goes.
Okay. Give me your second individual award, because again, I think we have a lot of other players to talk about after we give out our awards.
I'm going to go with a similar food theme that I was referring to. And I'm going to say, can oatmeal a day keep the offense away?
Can oatmeal a day keep the offense away? Is this okay? It's either Toto Aviles, because he's taking his boring oatmeal, which is teaching him to not get yellow cards, or it's Gonzalo Lujan, who needs to eat some more oatmeal because he's got, he's backed up or something. I don't know. I'm guessing Gonzalo Lujan because he's more deserving of a conversation.
You're right. It's Gonzalo Lujan, and it's funny enough, it's a bit of your explanation for the Aviles point that you made. Gonzalo Lujan is a fairly oatmealish sort of a player, right? He doesn't light your world on fire. Oatmeal to me is a very boring breakfast. If you give me the option, I would never have that for breakfast. So for me, he's an okay player. In the 5 defenders that we have, he's probably the one that resembles oatmeal the most, because all the other players have some sort of a spice or an element to them that I can feel like, okay, that's quite tasty. And Gonzalo Lujan is probably the one that's a little bit more average compared to some of the others. And the question with him is, can that keep some of the big offenses in the MLS at bay? Because we saw him struggle against LAFC, with Denny Bouanga basically taking him to school. And now he struggled against a team that hasn't scored more than 4 goals. And it's not the best look for Gonzalo Lujan. And I hope he can get back some of his, I don't know if he's lost confidence or not, but he hasn't looked great over the last couple of games. And I think he warrants a conversation of what his position is on this team.
I feel bad for saying this, but he's been awful the last 2 games.
No, he has been.
And it's not him. It's that he's not good enough. He is Sergei Kristoff. That's what he is.
He's Cello Egan.
No. He's Sergei Kristoff. He is not athletic enough to be out in space defending players one-on-one. Sergei Kristoff was good on the ball. He was smart. He tried to put himself in good positions. He was good in the air, set pieces, all that kind of stuff. Like, he had center back, a brain of a center back, but he wasn't athletic enough to be able to play a high line. He wasn't athletic enough to cover in space, and that became clear. And I do not see a difference between him and Gonzalo Lujan right now. So that's where I'm at with him. He's number 5 to me. I think you can't play him on the left side, at left-sided center back. I wouldn't play him on the right side again in terms of right back. So that means he's a right-sided center back, and he's not high on the pecking order at right-sided center back. I don't know what this means for Gonzalo Lujan, if I'm being completely honest. I haven't liked him so far.
He hasn't been great. He's been probably the poorest of the signings that we've had this offseason. And my understanding of Gonzalo Lujan, if I'm the coach, is put him in when there's an emergency and an injury and we need to rest a couple of players, but not play him in some of the big games, definitely. I do not want to see him on Wednesday. Absolutely no chance, because LAFC, that front line, is going to absolutely wreck us if we play him again. I'd rather Chelo Wigan in that right back spot than Ian Frey, and that's all I'm going to say. He needs to put in a good string of performances now to get back my, I don't want to say trust, because, well, but I'm not high on him right now, and he has had a couple of bad performances. So I hope he can get back into good form, because he started off decent enough, and perhaps it has to do with more our expectations of what he's going to look like, and perhaps he's just a player that's going to fill in when we need to rest a few players. So come on in the 60th minute, or play a game that's against an MLS opposition where we're not going to face some of those high-flying strikers and players who like to play in space. So we'll see. I think he's now further down the pecking order after these last two games than he was previously, and that's where we're at with Gonzalo Lujan.
I'm very nervous for him, because the thing, it's a physical ability. Like, he's not athletic enough, and that's hard to fix. And I don't know, do you think calling someone Sorry Christoph is an insult? Because he's a professional center back, but he's not good enough for this team at this moment. As anything,
I think it's slightly harsh. There is obviously a physicality to him. We've seen it against Denny Bwanga. He obviously at the start faced a little bit of issues, but he held his own towards the end. But
no, he had trouble.
I want to see a little bit more from him. I want to see
trouble
a
against
bit
Charlotte
more
too.
from him. Yeah.
Okay, moving on, because I don't want to hate on a young kid. My final award is the Pink Polo Kanye Award.
Ooh, that's a good one. See, finally coming up with some good awards, Scotty. The Pink Polo Kanye Award. If this is somebody who looks like...
There's a poem attached to this award.
Okay. Did you write this poem?
I did.
Very nice. So that's what you were spending your time doing instead of preparing for this podcast. And that's why we were a minute late, because you were too busy writing a poem. Interesting. The Pink Polo Kanye Award. Kanye, old school Kanye. Let's not even talk about new school Kanye. Probably one of the best rappers alive. Written some absolute bangers. Who we got left? I want to say Redondo, but that makes absolutely no sense. Let's see. Who have we not given an award to? I'm going to try and cheat a little bit in this situation. We've already done Drake Calendar, done Fafa Pico. Suárez, I doubt you're going to give one to. I'm going to go with Federico Redondo, because I don't have any other player that I think you want to talk about. So I'll give it to Federico Redondo.
I miss the old Ian Frey. The dribble through your soul, Ian Frey. The scoring headed goals, Ian Frey. The blood is ice cold, Ian Frey. I like the new Ian Frey. The shut you down, Ian Frey. The defensively sound, Ian Frey. He turns my frowns upside down, Ian Frey. He has been much more of a team player lately. And I like it, but I don't know if I love it. He's not the wild X factor that I came to know and love, and yet he's been more a part of the game plan and working his way into being what a true starting right back should be. So I'm conflicted. I like what he's doing defensively, but those dribbles down the right sideline, it feels like Javier Mascherano has told him to cut it back a little bit, and I do miss the old Ian Frey.
Guys, this is it. I'm going to be handing in my resignation to the Drive Pink Dialogue Corporation, because I don't think I can ever top that. That was beautifully done. And I can't believe you spent your time writing those bars, as Messiano says, instead of preparing for this to have a good conversation. But you know what? Absolutely worth it, man. Absolutely worth it.
Hey,
It's a.
we're here for a good time. That's it.
I wasn't sure where you're going with this conversation. I don't know if we should be having this conversation right now. This would have been a really good midweek 15-minute conversation about, what is Ian Frey becoming as a player? Obviously, he hasn't changed as a player. He still has those same level of skill sets. But you're right. We've definitely seen him curtail some of his adventurous zeals. And that is an instruction. It's very clear that the left side is going to be where we're going to attack from in terms of our left back going forward. And the right back has to sit back and play in a 3-man back line when we're on the ball. And I don't know if that's hurt Ian Frey a little bit, but it doesn't get the best of him, which is fair because Jordi Alba obviously is fantastic at going forward and creating those opportunities. I feel like it's different over the last couple of games because I don't know why he didn't do that yesterday. I feel like yesterday was the perfect opportunity for him to be a little bit more adventurous. But against LAFC, obviously, it's understandable. He didn't play against LAFC, so you can understand why he's not being asked to play that role. But I want to see a bit more of that. I miss that. I miss that X factor. I miss him going out into space and absolutely bullying the players with his silky feet, with his fancy feet, as you would say. And you can ask a player to do certain instructions, but you shouldn't necessarily take away the X factor from them. So I don't know what the reason for that is. And I feel it's more of an instructional thing than anything else. But you're right. Ian Frey is becoming more of a team player recently. And maybe this is his next step in progression of where he goes.
I don't want Ian Frey to be a team player. I want him to be an X
No.
factor.
Yeah. I want it to be great.
Yeah.
Who cares if we lose every single game?
And it's interesting because we're having these conversations about being productive down the right side, right as we see Ian Frey stop doing that in a lot of ways. And you could say that's correlation. You could correlate it to Tadeo Allende being out. But I feel like I haven't noticed really many people talk about Ian Frey going forward. And it does feel like he's been pulled back a little bit. Now, that's because the coaches want him to be a guy that they can rely on every single game. And that's fine. And that's part of the progression of going from backup trying to prove yourself to you're my guy. I need you to be responsible for certain things and I need to be able to trust you. So I'm not complaining, but I do miss the pink polo Ian Frey.
And he's still been fantastic in this role. Like he's doing great as that right back. And it almost feels like he's finally coming to his own as a player who's consistently performing for the team. And maybe that's what this looks like, right? Maybe this is what we have to swallow the red pill to understand. We're going to miss out on some of the fancy Ian Frey highlight reels that we always get. And maybe that's the progression that it looks like, as you said.
I think this is it. I think I won this time. No doubt about it. No. Coming through at the end.
Absolutely not. The fact that now I understand why you had to reuse one of your awards because you spent all your brain power and energy writing that bloody poem, but you absolutely canceled out your awful, woeful award with a very, very good award, possibly the best award that we've got so far. So I will give you that. I don't think you won. I will say it's a draw, and maybe we'll let the chat decide.
There are a couple other players I think are worth talking about. Chelo Wiegand came back, and I thought he looked good, certainly compared to what we've seen from Gonzalo Lujan at right back. Chelo Wiegand is a huge upgrade, and when similar to Federico Redondo for me, when you start looking at Chelo Wiegand from the perspective of he's the backup right back, he starts looking a lot more appealing, and I thought he played pretty well last night. Not that he's better than Ian Frey, but once you acknowledge that and once the coaches have acknowledged that, it's really nice and easy to like Chelo Wiegand as a backup right back.
Honestly, he looks fresh.
He does look fresh. Noticeable considering how many minutes some guys have played. Toto Aviles, back-to-back games without a yellow card. Never thought I'd say that, but I'm proud of him. And he looked fine yesterday. Jordi Alba, I thought looked much better than he did last Wednesday when he was unable to get into good positions. I thought he was much better in this game. Telasco Segovia, we talked about. Busquets, he scored really highly, actually, now that I'm looking at the scores. But I thought he was solid. He had a
Yeah,
really
I
nice
thought he had a
turn
good
at one
one.
point. But as he led it to, I believe, Fafa Pico on the right side. That ended up petering out, but it was a really nice turn. Redondo, I thought Redondo played well. I thought he played well, especially by his standards. I thought he played really well.
I
Suárez, we mentioned. Yeah, go ahead, sorry.
I have an understanding on Redondo. I thought he played well. He had a few choppy moments where he gave the ball away
Mhm.
uh, unnecessary times, but I could see why, because he was trying to be a little bit more progressive with his passing and affect the game in the final third a bit more. And I like that. I'd rather he take risks and do that, because one of those opportunities actually led to a big chance for Toronto and could have ended quite horribly. But I feel like he needs to be a little bit more brave and assertive in the progression. And maybe these are the games that he needs to try those in, where the jeopardy isn't that high and he can get away with it. And I thought that was good. I liked what I saw from him yesterday.
Yeah, I still think that we're in a position right now where Javier Mascherano is rotating Yannick Bright and Federico Redondo, and he's giving Yannick Bright the more important games. So it's like a 50-50 split where Bright gets the more important 50-50 of the two games. But these are the type of games where he's going to get an opportunity, and he played well in this one. So I wanted to give him credit. Robert Taylor, I thought was fine. Yannick Bright was fine. Santi Morales, actually, on the second watch, he had a couple really nice moments. It's disappointing none of them led to goals, but he had some really nice passes. He's got something to him. I like it a lot. And then the big one I think we need to talk about is Alan Obando. Makes his debut. 734 career minutes now after those 21 minutes last night. He has barely played soccer at the professional level, and I think that is important to remember. Obviously, he had a great chance that he missed, but also he had some nice moments. I thought on set pieces, he had some interesting movement inside the box, which is more of an experienced wisdom type of thing. And I also noticed the team, as soon as he comes onto the pitch, starts putting balls into the box. And we know Luis Suárez is not like a merchant as a go up and head the ball in. So that tells me that they think, oh, we have a target man in there that we can be successful with if we put crosses into the box. And that's something that they've seen in practice. He also had a moment or two in hold up that was interesting that we haven't seen a ton from our strikers of recent years. So he misses the big moment, but there were little things that I liked about his performance.
Yeah, he had a couple of really good moments, but I think it's going to get overshadowed by that one opportunity that he kind of
Yeah,
fluffed his
definitely.
lines. But this is an 18-year-old player who hasn't played a lot of minutes, as you said, and we need to be very patient with him. As a player who's going to come on in the 80th minute to try and maybe affect a game, and as you mentioned, be a threat on those set pieces when we want to maybe put the balls in and throw the kitchen sink at the opposition, he's going to be a big asset. Holding the ball up, I saw a couple of really good moments from him that led to opportunities for us where he held the ball and then we could catch the opposition on the break. And I really liked those glimpses of what I could see. Now, this is a raw player who's going to have to really do some growing, but that's what we brought him in for, potential. And we just need to be patient with him. And maybe there's going to be moments where we're going to have our heads in our hands and wonder why did he do that, but he's going to come good, and we're going to have to be lenient with him. You can't judge him as somebody who's going to come in and score 10 goals for us, because this is not a player that we brought to score 10 goals. This is a player who is potentially going to emerge into a really good striker for us, and we need to give him time for that.
Yeah, I think he's going to be fine. And I also think he's going to be a really, really, really good striker when he's 23.
Exactly.
And that'll be long after Inter Miami. So just enjoy the little moments of fun we get from him. And it'll be nice to get Luis Suarez off his feet a couple more minutes than he's gotten so far this year. I think he desperately needs a game off to get back to goal scoring form. And I'm speaking of Suarez. So glad we have Obando. Glad he's ready for minutes now that you guys work permanent, everything situated. Any other players you want to mention before we talk about
I
this
think
LAFC game?
we've covered quite a lot of them.
Biggest game of the season?
Can I use Javier Mascherano's quote? Because I really like what he just said.
Go ahead.
He says, on Wednesday, we have a final, and we need the support of the fans. I believe in my team, and I think it will be an unbelievable night. I think he sums it up perfectly. This is a tough game. Our backs are against the wall, and it's an uphill climb. But we need to make the most of these opportunities as fans where we can get behind our team, dispel all the negativity that's surrounding the team, and just support them. Because on Wednesday night, we're going to have to create an atmosphere where we enjoy ourselves and we enjoy our team playing in the CONCACAF Champions Cup, because that doesn't happen often. We've come from the absolute depths of hell where we barely had any wins in a season, and now we expect to win every single game. So we're spoiled as fans. We need to get behind our team on Wednesday and absolutely support them till the final whistle. Whatever happens, win or lose, you just got to get behind them. And that's how I'm going to go into that game. I'm going to enjoy it. I'm going to be very nervous, but I'm going to let loose all the negative energy and just hope our team can go out and put on a good show.
I'm sorry, my headphones just had a spasm, and I believe what you said made it out, but I did not hear any of it. So I apologize for that.
They made it out.
I caught little glimpses.
It was great. It was better than your rap battle. It was better than what you had to say.
Listen, I'm not a rapper, okay? I'm just here for a good time. I was reading your lips though, and it looked powerful. So I want to appreciate that.
It came from the
I
heart.
think maybe we should end the podcast before my headphones explode in my ears. I'm very excited for this game. I did want to spend a few minutes, but I think this is a technical issue that we probably shouldn't try and fight through. I will say at the very end, or earlier in the chat, Victor says, "What is wrong with your headphones? Are they too small to hold in place?" I keep touching them, and I do that a lot, and I think it's a nervous tick, but it also may be the fact that they're about to explode in my ears at any moment. Final words before we wrap it up.
Wednesday, man, do or die. Let's do this. It's the best team in the MLS on paper. Now it's time to go prove it. This is the first trophy that we can win, and it all starts on Wednesday. It's a final. Let's go.
I put my entire reputation on the line for this trophy. I said when we beat Sporting Kansas City that we were going to win the whole thing, and it has set up perfectly for us to do that. The only thing that can stop us is ourselves. We did that last Wednesday. I think we will overcome it this Wednesday. I am very much excited for this game. I think games of this magnitude and stake early in the season is not something that all MLS fans get the privilege of enjoying. It's not the type of thing that all sports fans get the privilege of enjoying. So I'm just excited for it. I hope it's an amazing atmosphere. I hope the stadium is as filled as it could be for a Wednesday night. LAFC did a great job of creating a big atmosphere last week, so I hope we can return the favor. Final words, let's go Herons. Guys, I hope you have a wonderful night. We will see you guys next time. Hey everybody, thanks for tuning in. Do us a favor and hit that like and subscribe button. Since our first viewer, sharing this with you all has been the very best part. So from the beginning until the end, thank you for being a part of this and have a wonderful day.